This is level B3, 3 floors beneath ground zero. We walked into what used to be a garage for the federal government employees who worked in the building.
You can see cars hanging off here, cars down here.
Good God, this is an automobile hanging like this. Shops were down here. In
Shops,
addition to the
restaurants, 15 to 25,000 people per building.
35,000 commuters used to arrive in this station from New Jersey every day. But everything stopped just 5 minutes after Tower 1 tumbled down 6 stories overhead.
It's pretty eerie. It's pretty eerie. And the sign that says, "Next stop home."
I'm Dan Rather.
I'm Bob Simon.
I'm Charlie Rose.
I'm Vicki Mabry.
I'm Scott Pelley. Those stories and Charles Grodin tonight on 60 Minutes 2.
It all started in Manhattan nearly 2 months ago at a place that will be known forever as Ground Zero, an act of terrorism and mass murder that ignited a war that now has no end in sight. We have learned about the people who died there, the murderers who killed there, the heroes who still work there. Tonight, for the first time, we take you under Ground Zero to a once vibrant underground city within a city that is now a 16-acre burial ground, a place where the effort to rebuild, both physically and psychologically, faces extraordinary challenges. 7 weeks and a day after the attack on America's Twin Towers, there is still smoke in the air at Ground Zero. They can't put out the subterranean fires. It will be several more months before all the debris here will be carted away. And then there'll be an even more daunting and dangerous and time-consuming cleanup job, digging up and repairing what you can't see here, the tunnels and garages and underground mall beneath Ground Zero. Ken Holden, Commissioner of New York's Department of Design and Construction, is the city's point man in the cleanup effort. He says debris from the tall towers crashed through the roof of this building, World Trade Center Building 6, and through the basements 6 stories underground.
Large chunks of that heavy facade broke off, and presumably from floor, from the upper floors, 90 or higher, and just crashed through the center of this building, crashing through the 9 floors of this building. And you'll see when we go underground, crashing through many of the concrete slabs that create the parking structure.
The debris, some of the individual pieces weighing 30 tons, cannonballed through Building 6, creating an open space that looks like an atrium. It left much of the building unstable, above ground and below.
Be really careful here. A lot of these blocks are loose.
Down below, there are cracks and fissures in the staircases and walls.
Pretty regularly, and everybody.
Here's a hell of a crack in this.
Yeah.
And there was worse to come. It is still very dangerous down here, a war zone. The deeper we descended, the darker and drearier and dustier it became.
See, I get all those concrete blocks above your head, so please just kind of keep an eye, try to stay up underneath them. They're only being held down by wires.
You could smell smoke, and when the wind shifts in certain pockets, there is the uniquely unmistakable smell of death. There was devastation everywhere. So much damage to the superstructure that, quite frankly, we were surprised to see anything still standing.
And these are the huge columns, the huge exterior columns that support the exterior of the building. And you can see the force of the fire and the explosion has basically sheared off. And so that when you look at it from the outside, you see that northern facade is leaning against this building, and that's why it's leaning, because these have sheared off.
And when you see a building standing intact, Ken, you don't think it's possible this kind of thing can happen?
No, we're seeing very unusual circumstances throughout this building.
We kept descending. This is level B3, 3 floors beneath Ground Zero. We walked into what used to be a garage for the federal government employees who worked in the building. The daylight you see filters in from that giant crater at the bottom of what Holden calls the atrium.
I call it the atrium. Obviously, it was not an atrium. And you can see cars hanging off here, cars down here.
Good God, this is an automobile hanging like this.
With its tires burnt off. Obviously, the rubber has been burnt off. The fire here was so hot, obviously these cars are all burnt out, but you'll be able to see over, I believe it's over here, see the aluminum hubcap is just melted right off. That's a puddle of aluminum from the fire.
This is what's left of the hubcap?
Yep. There's a car right down there. Careful. There's a muffler, and there's a car down there.
This is really eerie because you realize it's not only a graveyard for automobiles, it's a graveyard for some people.
Tens of thousands of people used to come to these underground tunnels every day, not just to work in the towers and park their cars, but also to visit a vast underground shopping mall.
Thousands of people came here to shop every day.
Sure.
It was a city underneath the city.
A very, very vibrant place. Very vibrant place.
Shops were down here. In
Shops,
addition to the
restaurants, 15 to 25,000 people per building between people who actually work there. You have the, the 1 and the 9 train going through the middle of the complex. You've got the PATH trains. I mean, this was a mini city.
Below ground.
All below ground.
We still had 3 stories to go to get down to the rail tunnels. It was pitch black, disorienting, and it was slippery. The floor was slick with oil and gas from the abandoned cars, and we were warned the floor could collapse at any minute.
You see these cracks right here?
Yep.
Right along here, this is a cracked slab. You can see it goes all the way.
Yeah.
In a normal world, this is not a place I would recommend taking anyone to walk.
Well, that's the reason we want to keep moving here, because
exactly.
this is unstable.
The PATH commuter rail line is 6 stories below ground zero. Miraculously, perhaps, no one died in this station the day the towers came down.
They use standard operating procedure for the Port Authority and the TA is when there's a fire to evacuate. So all these, both the PATH trains and the subways were evacuated when the buildings were on fire. So when they did collapse, no one was injured. I mean, we lost a lot of people, but we saved a lot more than we lost.
35,000 commuters used to arrive in this station from New Jersey every day. But everything stopped just 5 minutes after Tower 1 tumbled down 6 stories overhead.
And of all the things we've seen some incredible things today. Seeing this empty train.
It's pretty eerie. It's pretty eerie. And the sign that says next stop home, I mean, that's really kind of poignant.
Fortunately, there was nobody in the train.
Absolutely.
And this got evacuated.
This was all evacuated. No one was hurt down here.
But it may take 2 years before the trains will start rolling here again, and even longer before a nearby subway line will be fixed. There are hundreds of miles of wires, pipes, and cables to be replaced. By the end of next year, Commissioner Holden hopes to have his area above and below ground zero cleared up. Price tag, $2.5 billion.
Ken, estimated, how much debris have you already removed?
We've probably removed somewhere in the area of 400,000 tons. The initial estimates that we worked out with FEMA, the Federal Emergency Agency, were somewhere in the area, and with the Port Authority, were somewhere in the area of 1.2 million tons, so we're probably about a third of the way through.
That's 1.2 million tons.
Of steel and debris.
Most of that from the surface?
Almost all of that from the surface. We're just beginning to get below grade.
And to those who say, I appreciate their spirit, but they must be kidding themselves. It just can't be done. You say what?
We'll get it done. We took one on the chin, knocked us on our butt, but like all New Yorkers, we'll pick ourselves up, we'll dust our clothes off, and we'll get back to doing what we do best.
But removing the debris that is underground is a logistical dilemma, an engineering nightmare. When the World Trade Center complex was built 30 years ago, an enormous retaining wall, called a slurry wall, was constructed below ground. The wall is 3 feet wide and 60 to 70 feet deep. It was designed to prevent water from the Hudson River, just blocks away, from flooding the 6-story basements.
Here is your slurry wall. This is probably an old tieback.
The other side of this is the Hudson River?
Well, the other side of this is mud, but the water table here is extremely high because we're so close to the river that special construction techniques were needed.
The massive underground containing structure is nicknamed the bathtub.
That's the difference. The bathtub in your house is designed to keep the water in.
This keeps it out so that they could build the parking structures underground here.
For 30 years now, the wall has been supported by the floors in the basement levels, floors that have now buckled. Because of all the damage, Ken Holden's engineers will have to shore up the wall with more than 1,000 cables to prevent it from collapsing.
You know, we're drilling through the 3-foot wall, drill 85 feet or so down to bedrock, then we drill 35 feet into bedrock, then we take basically the same kind of cables that they use on bridges, grout it up, basically concrete it up, wait 3 days for it to cure, and then they tension those cables, and that sustained the wall.
Something fell?
Something fell. Once the permanent...
Are we all right here?
We're fine.
Okay.
Commissioner Holden knows he can never let his guard down here, and he has concerns about the structural integrity of the wall when he starts demolition nearby.
As we talk right now, parts of the slurry wall have been damaged a little. Is there some water seeping through, or not much?
There is no more water seeping through the slurry wall now than there is in normal circumstances.
But it's a constant battle to keep it dry down here, to keep the floods out. Even when the wall is intact, there are several inches of water in these tunnels.
But this water is not seeping in from the river. This comes from fireman's water.
Exactly.
Saving the wall is critical. If the tunnels flood, the water could pour into train and subway lines and destabilize nearby buildings.
I don't know about you, but is the hair on the back of your neck beginning to raise a little bit?
I've been down there too many times. My hairs are kind of worn away.
Well, maybe you forgive some of the rest of us.
Ken Holden is under enormous pressure to get the job done, below ground and above. But he knows he can't lose his sensitivity or perspective.
This was probably about 2 weeks ago where a father firefighter was walking around asking us to hold off on the road building operation. He basically pointed to a road to his left. He said, you guys have already buried my best friend over here, and I'm looking for my son over here. And he was pointing to the area where we're building another road. I saw out of the corner of my eye the father climbing up to the debris pile with a spade and picking up spadefuls of debris, looking for his son in that manner, and then threw the spadefuls back and continued to climb and look for spadefuls. It was probably ranks as one of my more poignant moments.
It's been 7 weeks and a day. Firefighters and other rescue workers still search round the clock at Ground Zero, looking for the bodies of the thousands of people who have died here. They don't want to leave anyone behind.
Do you consider it sacred ground, or is it now moving to a demolition and construction site?
In order for me to work here every day, I think I have to segue away from the sacred ground considerations and move towards a construction site. But I think you can't work here without being cognizant of the fact that there are people here, there's suffering here, there's dead bodies here, and there's a need to treat this ground in a manner different than you would in any other construction site.
Since the attack at Ground Zero, Ken Holden and his troops have been down in the rubble almost every day. It hasn't been easy, but America is at war, and Commissioner Holden plans to win.
I think my attitude is probably the same attitude that most of the guys have down here working on a day-to-day basis, working on the pile. 60 years ago, when the Nazis were bombing Great Britain, and the British people were pulling out their family and their friends and their neighbors from the rubble, Winston Churchill said, "We shall not fail, we shall not falter, we shall not weary, we shall not tire. Just give us the tools and we'll finish the job."
Death toll again continues to change nearly on a daily basis, but at this point the numbers we have, 3,040 of the number of people believed to have lost their lives in the World Trade Center attack, 569 missing, 495 confirmed dead, and 1,976 for whom death certificates have been issued. As the work continues above ground, I want to take you on a different program this morning. The sight can be painful and eerily familiar. A pile of twisted steel and shattered concrete smoldering where mighty towers once stood. Workers have already hauled away more than half of that wreckage. That's above ground, but below ground it is another story. CNN's Beth Nissen went there recently.
Around the clock, grappler machines claw at the estimated 1.2 million tons of World Trade Center debris. only part of which is visible at ground zero. The rest is compressed below ground in what might be called underground zero. 6 levels of what used to be a parking garage, shopping concourse, and commuter train terminal beneath the Twin Towers.
Just be aware that you may have pain, debris, wiring.
It is dark, dank, eerie. Broken water mains have formed small, foul lakes. Water drips steadily from the fire hoses up top, still pouring water on wreckage that has smoldered for 12 weeks now. The air is heavy with the stinging smell of smoke, with swirls of ash and fine particles.
This was a parking area for employees.
Hundreds of cars burned here when their gas tanks exploded from the heat of the burning towers above. Other cars were crushed when Tower 1 fell. Debris punched through the adjacent World Trade Center Building 6, sliced through the parking ramps. Cars tumbled into the vast crater. Some still clutch improbably to sharply angled concrete. Few Ground Zero workers go down here. This team from the Port Authority Police Department Emergency Services Unit came with a group of engineers monitoring the site.
There is a backup and support group to any of the engineers that come down here to see how far they can go, where they can go to.
No one can go far without hearing the sound of rubble shifting and tumbling as grapplers pull at it from above.
Heavy sound of falling debris.
That's a common sound. There have been collapses because of soft debris shifting. As they move out metal, it creates a void, and then things start to shift, and they've lost a couple of machines.
Does it make you at all uneasy to be under this?
It's uneasy, but you're cautious. This area is, with the condition that it's in, could change from day to day.
It is changing. Whole walls of compressed debris are shifting.
This is moved already the length of my hand from its original point.
That is putting pressure on floors, causing them to crack and buckle.
A lot of this buckling is recent.
This is just last, what, 2 days?
Due to the shifting of the support columns and the construction of the heavy machinery upstairs. So every day you come down here, it looks a little different and becomes a little bit more unstable.
Unstable, even where debris is super compressed in the depths of the World Trade Center's sub-basement at the PATH commuter train terminal.
There's actually parts of a collapse that has generated all the way down into the PATH track, 6 levels below street level. And we've gone through some of that debris, and you could pick up pieces of paper that refer to being on the 40th and 50th floor, or all the way down there.
A Port Authority police officer managed a speedy evacuation of the entire train terminal that morning.
Tuesday, September 11th. Somebody was on the phone probably here with this paper and dashed out.
The station was empty when the towers collapsed and debris crashed through.
Oh, you can come up. This is good right up to here.
At the jagged edge of the crater, a sheer 2-story drop to the train tracks below. Most of the commuter trains had been sent back through the tunnel to New Jersey, although one train remained in the station empty. The huge pillar of debris missed these cars, but crushed the rest of the train flat to the track. The debris is most dense, most compacted here.
That wall right there, see how it's all compressed? That's all from building 1.
More than 10 stories of the World Trade Center tower are compressed here into about 10 feet. Entire floors of an office building reduced to about 12 inches each.
All right, we're coming up.
This is a training drill on how to step lightly.
It is a long and precarious walk back up to ground level, back out to ground zero. The jackhammers and grapplers and steel saws will be working at the surface for months yet. It may take as much as a year before any full-scale excavation of underground zero. Beth Nissen, CNN, New York.